Menifee Redistricting Workshop. I'm joined here, my name is Tisor, I'm a consultant on behalf of the city of Menifee. Joined here by the demographer, lead consultant here, Andrew Westall. Obviously we have some city staff as well. So plenty of folks here to answer any questions that you have. Redistricting, again, is a process that happens every 10 years. As a result of new census numbers, which they just came out, the point of this is to reallocate districts to try and have an equal population. So this is a redistricting workshop, so it's just meant to have a back and forth with you folks, the residents, on what's going on with this process, hopefully get you engaged in this process, answer any questions that you have.
Got it. There we go. And so any questions throughout this process, please just ask them and we'll fire away. So we'll go ahead and get started with the formal presentation. And again, we're here for any questions that you have. So first things first, why is redistricting important? So how and where districts are drawn can shape communities' ability to elect representatives of their choice. So districts must be made as equal in population as practical, so that communities have equal access to political representation. So here's a timeline for this process. So we started last month. We've held one workshop a couple weeks ago. In January, we'll have two more. So these are workshops that are we'll have before a draft map comes out, with the expectation that a final will be adopted come March. So we're still pretty early in the process here. Some of the legal criteria for redistricting. So it's the equal population principle, the U.S. Constitution's Equal Protection Clause, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and the traditional redistricting criteria, which we will get into a little more detail here. So some of the traditional redistricting criteria that we need to abide by. So contiguity, so that's all parts of a district should connect. So you want to be able to drive the entirety of the district without leaving the district. So you don't want little islands popping up in different locations. Compactness, so the district should be geographically compact. We want them as close together as possible. Existing boundaries, so districts should utilize boundaries such as geographic, street, and political boundaries and conform to school attendance zones. And lastly, communities of interest. So districts should preserve neighborhoods and communities of people sharing common interests. So this is what the current map of Menifee looks like. So this is what we are considering changing throughout this process and most likely will. So the whole purpose of this redistricting process is to try and get as much input from the community as possible. You know, there's the criteria that I just mentioned, but first and foremost is having a full understanding of the city, and no one knows that more than you, the residents. So we're really hoping to get as much feedback from you folks as much as possible to make sure that we are refining this process as much as possible. And there's only two of you here, so you're getting our full attention right now for this process. So here's just some of the ways that you can do that. So obviously you're attending a workshop, so we appreciate that. Again, we'll have a couple more next month, so please come back, encourage others to do so. Even when you're not at a workshop, you can submit a public comment form, and you can do that through the City of Menifee's website, so cityofmenifee.us. There's a dedicated redistricting site straight from the city site that you can access. You can use the online mapping tool, and what that does is it allows you to create a digital map through that City of Menifee's website to create your own map how you see it, and again, submit your council district map draft. So however you would like to see the lines drawn, if you are feel so inclined to do that, you just draw your own map, submit that, and that bit gets considered as well. So the type of public input that we're seeking from the community, so the stuff that we would like to hear from you is, what streets, boundaries, or points of interest define your community? Does your community have major geographical boundaries? Is your community similar to other neighboring communities? And what are your shared interests? And now, why is this happening? Why is this important? Why is it important to protect communities of interest? So the idea is to preserve communities that share common interests and should be included in a single district in order to have effective and fair representation. So examples of those shared interests would be housing patterns, common culture, language, public services, points of interest. So, if everyone in one district shares the same church, they use the same hospital, the same transportation hub, what we want to do is to be able to protect that district's ability to continue to vote in the interests that they share in common. So those are examples of what we're looking for. Again, just in terms of the public workshop dates and times, we had one December 1st. We are currently at the Menifee Library, and there will be two more in January, so January 12th and January 29th. So again, if we'd love to have you back, and you have about a month to invite your friends and neighbors to join us this next time around. So this is what the website looks like. So again, the workshops are, periodical, but what we want you to do is be able to, on your own time, be able to access this information, submit the comment, create your own mapping tool. So that's why that website is there, to make it as convenient as possible for you to be able to do that on your own time. So tomorrow, this weekend, you can forward the link to your friends whenever you want. But everything that you need as relates to this process is available to you on that website. And this is what the public comment form looks like. The online mapping tool. And in a second, actually, Andrew will walk you through what that online mapping tool looks like. But this is how you would access it. And this is what it looks like when you start that process. And again, the last thing here is, again, the whole intent and purpose of this process is to get as much information from you folks as possible. So we have that website. There's different ways to access information. There's different ways to submit the forms and the online mapping tools. That being said, if you would like to just email directly to the city clerk, that's smanwaring@cityofmenifee.us, or if you'd just like to call and talk to somebody, that works too. Again, we're trying to make this as easy as possible. The city staff is available to you whenever you need them, and that number would be 951-723-3708. So we kind of went through this presentation pretty quick here. If we don't have any questions just yet, we'll let Andrew kind of walk through that online mapping tool, to see, to show you exactly how that functions. But again, the purpose of this is just to answer questions and just getting feedback from you folks. So again, if at any time you have any questions, please just let us know. Until then, I'll hand this over to Andrew, who will walk us through the online mapping tool.
Thank you, Tisok. So any questions so far, gentlemen? Good, okay. All right, there we go. So as Tisok showed you a little bit earlier, this is the city's website for redistricting. Once again, it's cityofmenifee.us/redistricting. And on the website, there's a variety of information. Up in the top corner, we have our important documents. So we have things like the city's demographic profile based on the 2020 census. Some of the handouts that you see in the back, like the frequently asked questions, the online or the public comment form that Tisok just went through, as well as the current map and copy of the presentations that we've done in front of the city council so far. What you can also see on the website as you go further down here is all of the dates. And so as you can see, we do have 2 more workshops, as we talked about in January, at the Case Cisneros Senior Center and the Marion Ashley Community Center. And then on February 2nd, we'll be back in front of the City Council presenting a draft map or draft maps. And this process is scheduled to wrap up by March 16th. Based on state law, the city has to be completed with this process by April 17th of next year. So that gives us a full month before the legal deadline to finish. And then, as we were just talking about, I'm going to do a quick demonstration on the online mapping tool. And as you can see here, where it says online mapping tool, all you have to do is click on the little link, and it'll take you directly to the mapping tool. Sometimes it takes a second to load. There we go. And this is what the landing page for the online mapping tool looks like. Up on the top here, there's a website that'll take you back to the city's redistricting page if you want to go back. And in order to draw a map, you have 2 different templates. So you have a blank template, so you can start from scratch, similar to what you see here. Over on this side, you see the city of Menifee. That's a blank map of the entire city without council districts. And then over here you have the 4 current council districts of the city. And so you can start with either of those templates and be able to draw your own map. So what you want to do is go up here in the corner. And let me do this, log out real quick. And what you want to do is you want to be able to first, you want to register, right? And so in order to register on the website, which you can see up here in the right-hand corner, all that you need is a name and email to register to sign up for the website. And then you'd want to go and you establish your login credentials. So we'll just use this here. All right, so there we go. So we've logged in, and you just go to your organizations page, and as you can see, there's a lot of projects that we're working on. San Bernardino, we just finished. But you go to the City of Menifee's site, right? And this will take you directly there after you register. And so then once again, you have 2 templates, right? You have a blank template you can use or the current template. And so I'm going to do a demonstration with the blank template tonight to show you all the functions of the mapping tools so that you can actually draw your own maps. As you can see up here as well, we have 14 people that are actually using this site currently. So you just click on the template, and it'll take you to this page here. And what you see is a variety of things. So up here, it's the entire map of the city of Menifee. And this is broken down by block groups. Right, the software or the mapping tool allows you to draw maps either based on census block groups or census blocks, and I'll show you how to switch back and forth between those in a second. Up here on the left-hand side of the page, you have the city's population, which is currently 102,790 people. You have your 4 districts that you'll create using this website, and then you have also some tools up here to do your selection with. And so I'll start walking through some of this stuff. Once again, you have the city's total population up here. As you're drawing your council districts, you want to try, your ideal population is 25,697 people. And so that's the ideal population that you're trying to get to. And then what you can also see is up here, it'll break down the ethnic population of the city. right? So the city of Menifee is currently 44% white, 7% black, 7% Asian, and 38% Latino. And as I said before, you have kind of different tools that you can use here. You have a point and click selection, a paintbrush selection. You can also draw a rectangle to select various census blocks or block groups. And as I mentioned before, you have two kind of geography that you can use. This larger geography of census block groups is a good place to start. And then if you need to refine your maps, you can go down to census blocks. And as you can see, there's a lot more smaller geography in the city in which you can actually draw maps based on these census blocks. When you want to draw your first district, what you want to make sure is that you select up here which district you want to draw. And as you can't probably see it very well from back there, but there's a kind of a light shaded gray on District 1. If you wanted to switch to District 2 or District 3 or District 4, you just want to make sure that you have the right district selected on when you're trying to build that particular district. So why don't we start with a District 1, and why don't we start with the paintbrush tool. And so you can, what you would do is you just hold this over the census block that you want and hold your clicker down. Actually, let's go back to block groups, that'll be easier. So as you can see, it select that area, and you can just drag it on down. You know, so we'll just keep coming down here, kind of around the freeway. And we can start with kind of all of that area in one district there. So as you can see, what you're looking for up here on the right or left-hand side of the corner is this green check mark, right? Because that green check mark will tell you it's within the population deviation. You know, the main reason why we do redistricting is to equalize the population, and you've had tremendous growth in the city of Menifee over the last 10 years, which is why the population is now over 100,000 in the entire city. And so as you're drawing your districts, you want to make sure to meet those equal population standards, right, you want to make sure you have a green check mark here for each of your districts. So that district that we just drew works population-wise, but as you can see, there's an area up here that's part of this block group that goes outside of the city of Menifee, and this is just a function of census geography. But we'll come back and clean that up at the end, and I'll show you how to do that. So when you're ready to accept a certain geography for a district, you can just hit accept here. And there's our new district number 1. Like I said, we'll come back and clean that up at the end. So why don't we start with District 2. And this time we'll use the point and click selection. So we'll start up here in Quail Valley, and you just start picking it, once again, just picking up areas.
When you do that, you have to justify why you are changing it?
Well, in this one, it's a blank map. So there's, certainly there are various reasons why you'd have to justify changing the map. The main reason that we have to change the current map is because of that population equality, right? So that, what you're trying to do is get all of these districts within 10% of each other in terms of population. And currently, under the current district boundaries, it's 25%. All right, and so the legal standard has to be lower than 10, which is why we're going to have to change the districts in some fashion. But as you're selecting these areas, in the city of Menifee, there isn't, it's really those natural boundaries, right? So as you can see here, this is the 215 freeway, right? And it makes pretty good boundary for the city of Menifee. The city of Menifee is also, to an extent, split up in quadrants, right? And so, whether it's Newport or McCall, basically there's kind of an east-west and a north-south division in the city. And that's why I think the current council districts represent that split, and that's something that would be likely to continue, but it's always up to the city council.
If you do the district, will it tell you that you are, I guess you'd say, not in compliance to either the ethnic or the age population, but they'll tell you redo it?
Yes, so there's an evaluation button up here on the right-hand side, which I'll take you through once we finish a map. and you can evaluate it. But the first thing that you want to do, as I said before, is this population equality. You want to make sure you got 4 green checks up here, and that's kind of your first legal standard you want to meet. That ensures that you're within the population deviation, right? So in the District 1 that we built here, it's negative 806 people, less than what an ideal council district, right? In this District 2, which we haven't finished yet, but it's negative 42 people. So once again, you want to be within, each district needs to be within 10% of each other in terms of total population. And so what this program does is it automatically sets the ceiling at 5% above, and it sets the floor at 5% below. And so this will always tell you that you're within that 10%.
Will it tell you that you need to either go east or west, north or south?
No, it won't tell you that. I mean, it's really the geographic choices are your own, right, based on the census geography.
Say within that block, it may say, okay, now it's straight that way, but not the other direction.
Yes, I mean, it'll tell you very quickly. So let's say we didn't like Quail Valley in the district, right? So we took out Quail Valley. Well, as you can see, if we take out Quail Valley, we got to go find 7,500 people somewhere. And so it'll tell you, and we lost the green check mark. And so that's really what tells you what you need to know in terms of the balancing the population. As you can see, as you scroll over each block group too, it'll give you the ethnic background of that particular geography of the city, right? So up in this much northern section, kind of between Ethonac, and I'm not sure what the southern boundary is there. But in that area, so yeah, between Ethonac and I guess that's Bruce Road, there's 2,410 people in that area, right? And so you can look at the ethnic breakdown of each one of these areas. This area has 983 people. This area has 1,447.
But we have to keep it within 4 districts? Would it make it that you want to
Yes.
add it?
Well, the program won't let you add a 5th district, and ultimately it's up to the city council to add more council members. And it depends on the city. I mean, some cities, if they have a city charter, you actually have to go to the voters and do that. But why don't we go back and...
Just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
This is the first time I've ever been in a meeting like this.
Sure.
Is there some rhyme or reason to the way you have the district set up? You have the northwest part of the city as number 1, then you go south and you go back to the northeast. Is that common? So in other words,
Yeah.
you started up here, what you just did,
Mhm.
as District 1. Could that be District 4?
Yes, it certainly could. Now that...
The way the city has it mapped out is District 1, is that correct?
Yeah, that's the way the city has it set up, and that's just happened to be where I started. I could have started on the east side of the city. Now that being said, the council members are elected by district, right? And so, I assume this happens in Menifee where the even districts are up at the same time and the odd districts are up at the same time, right? So if you switch the numbers, you would have a different set of elections and a different set of council members. Yeah.
Yeah, another question.
Sure.
So this 102,000, that is our current population.
Yes.
This map was off of something 10 years ago.
Correct. Yeah.
So far that looks about the same.
Well, I guess it's in the nuance, right? So, if you look at this map currently, right, first off, the 215 is used as a boundary only in one section of District 1, right? So this area between Bruce Road and the top of the city is actually in District 4. District 3 goes over to Hahn Road and then kind of goes over even further over in the south here, right? So what we've seen in the city is that in terms of population growth, most of the growth in the city happened in District 2 and District 4, and then District 1 had the least amount of population growth. As you can imagine, Sun City's pretty built out. There isn't a whole lot of new residential development taking place in that part of town until you get to this really northern section, right?
The demographic profile, that's, last census then?
So that's the demographic profile from the current census. I don't know if we did one for the last census. I can't recall. But I believe the growth was, over 20,000 people. Do you remember, Sarah, what the population of the city was?
10 years ago?
Yeah, prior to the census?
I want to say it was just under 80.
Yeah.
Right, about.
Yeah, it's been about 20,000 people, which is, it's about 25% growth citywide. It's pretty big. So why don't we continue with the demonstration? So we'll accept that area, and that'll be our District 2 there. Then we'll continue on to District 3. So we'll come down here and just start selecting at the bottom of the city. And you pretty much want to just keep selecting until you get, close to those population deviations we were talking about. So that gets you about there. Yep, so we have a district with 25,771 people and population deviation of 74. What'd you say?
When you said it, check off, is there?
Yeah, so once again, the green check up here in the corner. Yeah, so that's what you want to look at.
So there's the down arrow that's right here that's saying we need 25,000 for like this District 4, and then the green check is saying we're within that 25,000 number.
Yeah, we're right there. So why don't we go ahead and accept that? And then we'll build our last district here, and we'll do some cleanup. So once again, you want to make sure you come back over here and select on the district that you're working on. We'll go back. Actually, let's use the triangle this time. So if we do this. See, sometimes it takes too much geography, so you can kind of back it out. And then maybe use one of the other tools to kind of finish off what you're doing. All right. So with the rest of the city's geography, we have 25,474 people in that last district, and has a population of minus 223 from the ideal. So it's right there on. As you can see, we have green checks all along the board. You also want to make sure that you allocate all of the population. So you want to make sure that this top line goes to 0, because that's the way that you can ensure that you've allocated all the population. And there's a way to check that too under the evaluation button. So why don't we go ahead and accept that. So as you can see, based on that block group geography, there are a couple of areas. There's a little bit area here that's part of District 1, and a little area right here, and then you have another area up here, and these are non-contiguous with the districts. And one of the other major requirements we have to fulfill is that contiguity. If you go to the evaluation button, once again at the top of the right-hand page, you can click on that, and it'll give you a breakdown of the things that you're looking for. So the first one is equal population. And so, as you can see, you got a green check mark here. You got 4 out of 4, so we meet that criteria. Contiguity, which is that next requirement. As we know, we have a little piece of District 2 here and District 2 here, which doesn't connect to District 2. We also have this little piece of District 1 up here that doesn't connect to District 1. And so those are a couple of areas that we need to clean up for this to be a legal plan. The competitiveness portion of this website is not active. What that would show you is really partisanship breakdown, so Democrats, Republicans, Independents. Based on state law for redistricting for counties and cities, they cannot use partisanship data. So we're prohibited from doing so, and so that's why you won't see it on this website. Compactness is also one of the criteria. It's not a requirement, it's optional, but you do want to draw fairly compact districts. And as you can see in the city of Menifee, we've got pretty compact districts except for that contiguity issue we talked about before. Well, yeah, you can try keep making them compact, but what I tell most folks is not to worry about the compactness as much. It's more important to keep neighborhoods together, and neighborhoods aren't always rectangles. And so as you're looking at things, you want to do a decent job of creating compactness. But for instance, Quail Valley's got to go somewhere, right? And so Quail Valley, even though it's not really connected to the rest of District 2, it's either got to go to District 2 or District 1. And you have a mountain range right here that kind of separates it from the rest of District 2. And so, so you could switch those, which do some different things over here as well. But those are the kinds of things you want to look at when you're looking at compactness.
As far as that 2 out of 4, it had a red check.
Oh yeah, no, we'll when we fix that, it'll fix that, right? So I'll show you go back and we'll fix that issue. You can also look at the breakdown of the districts, right? So it'll tell you that you have one majority white district, which is District 1, and then District 2, 3, and 4 do not have any particular majority population in them. They're minority coalition, and so they're mixed across the board. And so and you can look at that as well. In the block group splits, I wouldn't worry about it too much as well. When you're dealing with the geography that's small, like the city of Menifee, you're going to have block group splits and use block groups just to use those more natural boundaries. So that's how the evaluation button works. And we'll go back, why don't we go back and clean up some of these areas. As we talked about before, we do have some contiguity issues. So up here, when we were using the census block groups, this census block group actually goes out into the city of Paris all through here. And so what you want to do is go to a lower level of geography, like blocks, and as you can see, you have a lot more options of where to add these areas because they're much smaller areas. And so I want to make sure once again that District 4 is highlighted because that's the brown district here that we're trying to add this area to deal with our contiguity problem. So we'll just start clicking on these blocks here. And then once you have the area selected, you can hit accept. Okay, so we've added that area, but as you can see with District 1, now we don't have enough population, right? So at some point, we got to add some population to District 1 to get back within the deviation. But what we'll do first is we'll fix the other contiguity issues on the other side of town. So as we showed before, we kind of had this issue here and this issue up here. So we want to go to District 1 and add in those areas. So select that area and that area right there. All right, so as you can see, it all turned green, right? And so we don't have those contiguity issues anymore. But as I said before, we do need to find some people to add. Sure. Yeah, so when we change this geography up here, this non-contiguous area, and we put it into District 4, because remember it was in District 1 earlier, there's so much population up there that it put us out of whack, right? So now we have to fix District 1 to make sure that we get the population back into compliance. Well, the issue is one of the legal requirements is let me do it this way. Every part of a district needs to be able to connect to a different part of the district. So you do have some cities in which which aren't contiguous, right? They have islands kind of in different places. But the city of Menifee is just one contiguous area. And so as we draw the districts, you want to make sure that for any district that you're looking at, that you should be able to travel anywhere inside the district without having to leave the district. And so that's the idea of contiguity. And so when this area up here was connected to District 1, you had two different polygons, and you had to travel through District 4, right, to connect there. And that's just something that's illegal, frankly. The law won't allow that. And so that's why you had to add that population back over here. But then you have to figure out where we can fix some of these issues. And maybe down around this area, it looks like we have some population we could add. So once again, so District 1 is our issue, right? We need about 1,500 people. And you can just come down here and once again just start selecting census blocks until you get there. And you can just watch it. See, that one census block had about 1,000 people in it. So that's a very dense census block. I would imagine a bunch of apartment buildings right there. You're talking about the area that's right there, the northwest corner of Newport and Bradley. And so just by selecting that one area, right, it got us to the population that we needed. So we can just hit accept. All right. So with that, you have your basic 4 districts. They all meet population equality, which once again is the reason why we do redistricting. They're all contiguous, right? And so we met the 2 basic requirements for the city of Menifee. As Tasok talked about before, there's other requirements like the Federal Voting Rights Act and the Equal Protection Clause, which protect minority voters' interests. It doesn't appear to be an issue in Menifee today. There certainly is a substantial Latino population in the city of Menifee, but they're pretty spread out. And so that certainly doesn't seem to be an issue this time around, but maybe in 10 years, as the Latino population grows, that might become an issue. So that's other factors we take into consideration. And then as we've talked about, really getting feedback from the public. Is this something, that makes sense in terms of dividing up areas? I know the area of the Menifee Lakes Golf Course, the Menifee Lakes Golf Course, isn't all in one district currently. And so does it make sense to include all of this population into one district? As you can see, it's not an easy thing because you'd have to take some population out somewhere to make it happen, maybe come across the freeway, but you have some options there. But as you're looking at this, I know 10 years ago, there was a lot of interest in keeping Sun City in one district, right? And so that may come up again. But as we go through workshop to workshop and community to community, it's really trying to understand what those neighborhoods are. What are those best dividing lines? Does Newport Road make more sense than the Salt Creek Trail as a boundary, for instance? Does the 215 freeway make sense? As you come up here into the hill, what is kind of the best boundary? Is it wrapping around the hill? Does it include the hill? Those sorts of things. And so those are in general, some of the options that the council has in terms of drawing a new map.
So question, you showed us the interactive piece here,
Yes.
the citizens, I imagine.
Yes.
And
Yeah, you can go home and play with this all you want.
but that's like kind of fun. But my question is, so when our population decides to do this themselves, does that then go to the city, for the city to look at it, council to look at it, and they kind of throw this all into a hopper and go, that's good, this is not good?
Yes.
And why would you want the citizens to draw their own map? Because maybe they don't like one particular council person?
Or maybe they don't like what the council map looks like. I think it depends on the jurisdiction, right? How involved the public gets in drawing their own maps. And I mean, as a city of Menifee, it's you have some pretty large boundaries. Everyone in town recognizes those boundaries. So that it's probably a little easier here than it might be somewhere else. You'd also have various ethnic minorities if they're large enough in an area. Like Riverside County just went through this. How many Latino districts or Latino majority Board of Supervisor districts should you draw? That sort of thing. So it really depends on the complexity of the jurisdiction. But what we want to do is really kind of couple things. One, get as much information from the public as possible. But we do share that with the council. So any maps that anybody draws, we'll provide to the council. It'll be part of the staff report that the city puts together for the council members. And so they'll be able to review all of that information and be able to take it into consideration as they're finalizing a map, which once again is going to take place in March.
I work with some seniors, and seniors don't like computers.
Yes, sir.
So if you're in Sun City and you say, well, I think I want to make a change, or I think a change would be necessary, how can Sun
That's a great question. So in general, there's a couple different ways. As you can see from the handouts, one of the handouts that we provide is a blank map, right? Like the one that's up here, as well as the current council district map. And so when we just held a workshop a couple weeks ago at Sun City Library, but the public is welcome to just draw on these, right, and submit them to the city clerk's office. And then all of that information we'll review and summarize for the council. So even if, say, a senior who lived in Sun City just wanted to say, this is what I think Sun City is, right, in terms of its boundaries, they could turn that into the city, and that's that's a community of interest, and that's something that would be taken into consideration during their deliberations.
Because when I say seniors, I've even been out in Rhode Land, and it seems like the Rhode Land people out there say, I like Rhode Land, we're part of Menifee, but we're Rhode Land. Just like Sun City, we're Sun City. We know we're part of Menifee, but we want to have our voice here and the city councilman that's more aligned to Sun City, just like Genius, is that up in his area? He's more aligned to the people of Groveland and Homeland. And if you start toying around my district, those constituents will not be represented.
Yeah, and certainly if we drew maps that say took kind of this area up here in Romoland and Homeland and linked it with Quail Valley, I'm sure we would get a lot of feedback from the public on that. Because, I don't know how many people actually travel from this part of the city to that part of the city. And so I think as we go through this and we get the comments from the public, those are exactly the types of things that we're looking at, or looking for, I should say.
Could the senior there write a comment why they think it should be this way?
Absolutely. So, not only, once again, we have the public comment form that's online, but there are handouts in the back. And the city clerk's office can get you copies of those public comment forms. And if people want to fill them out and turn them back in, we'd be happy to look at that information to make sure that we're, once again, summarizing it for the council and giving them our best thoughts in terms of what the map should look like.
Someone wanted to send an email in and spell out, write out from this road to this road and explain it that way. There's the public comment form, but you can also submit an email that writes that all out from this street to this street we want to see kept in Sun City. We will take those comments in as well.
Yeah, it's important to note that, this whole process, we went through it pretty quickly, but it can get complicated and very late, right? So this process is trying to refine this as much as possible. So, relatively quickly we got to a good population, we got to contiguity, so all those checks, right? But the human component to this, it's not just numbers and lines, that's what we're trying to decipher. Now, if folks want to comment just on their street, just on their block, just on their community, that's welcome too. So they don't have to necessarily go through this entire process to have a voice. They can pick up the phone and call city clerk and say, I want to stay in this particular district, I do not. So whatever's important to them, whatever comment that they want added to this process, they're welcome to do so. So yeah, we'd love for everyone to submit their own online maps and us have thousands of maps to sort through, because that would give us a lot of data. That being said, if the comment is just specific to their home, to their area, that's very welcome too, because again, these lines are just drawn right here based on population, but if that splits a community, then it matters to that community, and we want to make sure that we know that before.
How about the Chamber of Commerce? Do they have any input, or any of the businesses that say, I want to be in this district?
To the best of my knowledge, we haven't heard anything from them, but we certainly reached out to all the community organizations in town, made sure they had the information of the process of what's going on, and making sure that they're, trying to get them engaged in the process. So certainly they can always submit comments to the city clerk's office, for the council to review. But to the best of my knowledge, we haven't heard anything from them yet, have we? Yeah. So as we showed you before, right? And let me just go back to this one slide real quick. Right, so we have the workshops that go through January, and then once again, we'll submit a draft map for the council for their consideration at the end of January, and that'll be discussed at the first council meeting in February, which I think is the 4th, I believe. I know we had it earlier. February 2nd.
How much does the city council have input into this? Do they, when the facts are given to them and said, this is what it is, how much input can they say, no, that's all?
Well, I was just going to say, ultimately, the council has the discretion because they're the ones that adopt the new map. And so like any new city law, right, or what is called a city ordinance, they would adopt that new map and ordinance by the end of this process. And as we were talking about, right, we have 2 more workshops in January. We'll go to the city council first week in February with the draft map. Council will have another hearing on that map, and then the map would be finalized at the March 2nd council meeting.
And with anything that the council adopts, any city business, they want to hear from their constituents. So we're trying to gather all this information for them to present them with the comments from the public.
I do get involved in senior stuff with the city and the advisory committee. We get input from Sun City, and they are really adamant that they're Sun City, they're not Menifee. And you can talk to them, they say, you're Menifee.
I grew up around this area, and I didn't realize Sun City was part of Menifee until I applied for the contract. So, and I hadn't lived out here in about 20 years, but I didn't realize that was now part of the city of Menifee.
Well, same with Romeland, they are very adamant that they're Romeland, they're not Menifee. Even though they are.
So, any other questions, gentlemen? Because that pretty much wraps up the presentation. Certainly, we can stick around for a few minutes and answer any other questions you have. Okay. Well, thank you for coming this evening, and appreciate having you. And yeah, definitely, we'll take all comers. Yeah.